Hello and welcome. It's never too late to ask that question. What's the real impact of globalization and on whom? Well, I'm now joined by Clyde Prestowitz, the founder of the Economic Strategy Institute, who has somewhat contrary opinions on the subject. Clyde, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Great to be with you.
Right. So, you've been talking about globalization for a while. You've written a book called The Betrayal of American Prosperity. You've talked about these 3 billion new capitalists. There are some shifts happening in the global economy, and they've been happening for a while. Why is it that the question of whether globalization has worked or not become even more critical and relevant today?
Well, we've had a global economic slowdown and even crisis. And so in a crisis time when there's less growth, of course, people are unhappy. And then they begin to ask questions and they say, well, wait a minute. Is this system of globalization that we've been pursuing, is it working? And when you look at that question closely, what you find is that it has been working, but it's been working a lot better for those who are well off than it has been for the mass of average people.
And are you referring to those living within the United States, the inequality
no, I'm
within the
thinking
United
of
States?
it basically worldwide. And
Okay.
I mean, it has been, what's interesting is that globalization has contributed to global growth in all of the major regions of the world. And yet at the same time, if you look at each region of the world, the growth has been much greater and much more weighted toward the people at the high end of the income scale than toward the people at the lower end of the income scale. And that has caused political concerns essentially in all of the major countries and economies of the
Right. So, are you saying it has accentuated what was already bad, or has it created something in the form of a division between the haves and the have-nots?
No, I think it's a
or
new
a sharper
thing.
division.
I think it's a new thing. So I think we've had global growth, and many people have come into the global economy who were not there. Many people have risen out of poverty and have joined the global economy. And that's the good news. But of course, as you become part of the global economy, then expectations change. And one begins to expect more growth and that your children will do better. And then as those expectations rise, people begin to look around and ask the question, well, am I doing as well as I should be doing or as well as they are doing? And also bottlenecks arise in the economy, imbalances arise. And we had a huge imbalance in the year 2007, 2008, which resulted in a crisis, which had a very negative impact, again, globally, but particularly it had a negative impact on those who were just thinking that they were beginning to fulfill their expectations, and then suddenly they weren't.
And if you were to now spin forward, where is this heading, or where is all this going?
Well, that's really good question. That is the question. And what seems to have developed in all of the major economies is a movement towards what we're calling rebalancing. And so in China, there's rebalancing to try to emphasize less the export-led economy and more domestic consumption. In the US and some of the Western economies, less consumption, more investment, more saving, but rebalancing everywhere. But rebalancing is hard to do because it's a politically very complex. The system became unbalanced, but the politics of each system became organized around the unbalance. So to rebalance, it means also changing the politics. That is always difficult.
And what's the outcome of this going to be if you could illustrate with some economies, maybe the United States itself, and maybe the developing?
I think the outcome is going to be some rebalancing and overall, on average, lower growth.
Yeah.
We've seen this in China.
Okay. So
China's
my question also is, will it mean that people will start re-looking at the very definition of globalization i.e., to the extent their tariff barriers are high or not?
Right. Well, I think it will start people looking at the redefining globalization, and I think that they will redefine it more in terms of when we do these negotiations. Until now, we have said that we need to remove all of these barriers, but actually, in reducing tariffs and formal trade barriers, have we actually opened the economies? Are those the things that are actually reducing growth and development? And I think that in answering that question, many of the major countries are going to take a stronger look at what barriers are really the major barriers, and what will be the impact on the total economy if we move in a particular direction.
Right. So let me also ask about the 3 billion capitalists. Does that fit into the whole concept of globalization or the way global economies have evolved, particularly in the last?
Well, the 3 billion capitalists are the global economy. When I wrote that book back in 2005, India and China were really at the beginning of very rapid development, and of course the Soviet bloc had broken up and had also tried to go in more of a market direction. And so that's all happened, and we do have, I think, a global economy of 3 or let's say 5, 6 billion new capitalists, but it's an unbalanced one. And various parts of the global economy are moving at different speeds and in different ways. So the question now is, okay, we have a global economy, but is it the global economy that we want? And if not, how do we get to the one that we want?
Right. So last question then. So is globalization in danger of becoming a bad word?
I think yes. I think it already is a bad word in some places. Certainly if you go to the European Union and talk to average citizens on the street, you say globalization to them and they may throw an apple at you. And I think that's something that political leaders are beginning to become quite concerned about.
So absolutely, last question. So if the rebalancing is happening as we speak, if there is a recognition of the fact that globalization in the manner it was defined maybe a decade ago is not necessarily the way to go, how do you see the economic power balances shift then between the Western world and the Eastern world?
Well, I think that there will continue to be a rebalancing or a shift of power toward the developing economies simply because they have so many people. But I think that a year or so ago, there were many projections that China would become the world's largest economy by 2015 or 2017, and I think that has shifted a bit. And because of the fact that the imbalances and the need to rebalance have also resulted in a slowdown. And on the other side, the U.S. particularly has had some revitalization as a result of new energy sources and a lot of investment rushing into the energy sector in the U.S. So the U.S. economy looks like it might have some more life, while other economies are having to rebalance more seriously.
Right. Clyde Prestowitz, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.